It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, football is back. On today's edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast, we will have a full breakdown from Week 1 in the National Football League. Plus, we bring back Jason Kamlowski for Fantasy Football Files, giving your fantasy team all you need to know to have the best success in your fantasy football league. All that and so much more. But before we begin, we would like to thank our brand new sponsor at Regroup Building Services, specializing in custom homes, remodels, additions, and so much more. If you're looking for a new place to call home or just need repairs on your current home, look no further. Regroup Building Services has you covered. Make sure you check them out today at www.regroupbuildingservices.com. Once again, that's regroupbuildingservices.com. We do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. We are also sponsored by PM Plus Reserves, now expanding their territory to serve the I-81 corridor from Hagerstown, Maryland to Stanton, Virginia. All right. It's time for another edition of the Kirby on Sports Podcast, starting right now.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
The wait is finally over. With all the uncertainty going through in today's society, with all the unknowns, with COVID and everything, who would have thought we would have the start to NFL? It is here. The NFL football season is officially back. I am very pumped. I'm beyond words, very pumped, very excited to bring you this episode. Week 1 of the NFL football season here on the Kirby on Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. As you know me. I'm Josh Kirby. I am the runner, CEO, whatever you want to call me, of this podcast. You can check us out on all streaming platforms. We're on Anchor, anchor.fm/Kirby on Sports Podcast. And you can check us out on all social media platforms. So make sure you find us via the Kirby on Sports Podcast. We're proud to be sponsored by Regroup Building Services. We do the honeydews that your honey don't. Make sure you tell them Josh sent you. You can go onto their website, www.regroupbuildingservices.com. We're also sponsored by PM Plus Reserves, now expanding their territory to serve the I-81 corridor between Hagerstown, Maryland, and Stanton, Virginia. I am, like I said, I'm very pleased to be doing this show. Once again, calling in, bringing back contributor to the podcast, Dan Demski. Dan, are you excited, man?
Oh my gosh, brother. I am happy. Football, man, is back. And I couldn't be more excited, man. I'm so happy. And I thought you said it best, man, when you said, who knew that we would get to this point where we would have NFL football again, but we made it, man. We're here, and let's hope everything goes as planned and we can have a full season and we can enjoy some great football week in and week out.
I mean, in my opinion, this season there wasn't that much hype because, in my opinion, with no preseason, there wasn't a lot of, oh, games are coming back on. Let's get ready for week one.
Right.
It was like, oh my gosh, week
It just
one is
happened.
this Sunday.
Yeah, it literally just happened. Like you said, there wasn't a lot of build up, and that is one negative thing about there being no preseason. And yeah, but I was overall, I think Josh, I don't know about yourself, but I was impressed with the play in a lot of the games this weekend. I expected a lot more rust than we saw, and I'm sure we'll touch on that. But I'm just so happy it's back, man. It's so freaking nice, man.
Another point I want to touch on is that I did not trust myself to enter a paid fantasy football league this year. I'm in one paid survivor pick'em pool, and that's about it. Other than that, my fantasy leagues are free. So if I mess up or anything, or if I lose last place, I don't lose any money. So that was one of the downsides, but I'm glad I was able to get into some late fantasy leagues. And don't forget Fantasy Football Files with Jason Kamlowski each and
Hmm.
every week on the Kirby on Sports podcast. But Dan, how many leagues are you in? Have you paid for any, or were you in the same boat I was?
I'm in 3 leagues, excuse me, and I'm actually the commissioner for all 3 leagues. Um, so I mean, there's really not that, and they're all free and they're all ESPN. So it's the same thing I did last year. I'm just doing the same thing over again. And yeah, I've never really considered doing a paid league. I think in the future, if I have some more money to spend, I would definitely consider doing paid leagues because I think it adds another layer to the challenge of fantasy football. Um, and of course, with apps and websites like DraftKings and stuff like that, that's so big now. I definitely would consider doing that in the future. But well, I mean, like we said, the lack of buildup and the lack of hype, I think, led to a lot of people not really forgetting the NFL season was about to start, but like you said, saying, "Oh my God, it starts on Sunday." So, um, I think that definitely is going to lead to a lot less people playing fantasy football this year. And I'm definitely not as organized with it as I was in years past. And I haven't been taking it really as seriously so far. But I think this week, hopefully this upcoming week, I start to pay more attention to it because I don't want to go on a nice losing streak to start the seasons. So
Yeah, I'm in the same boat you are, but okay, enough with the pleasantries. Let's get into some week one action.
do it.
It seemed relatively normal. I want to say, I'll just hop straight into the Texans versus the Chiefs. It just seemed very normal. There were some things I want to touch on. Okay, so let me rewind a little bit. It is the decision of the teams whether they want fans or not. So only
Right.
2 games, I believe, had fans. The Titans
Correct.
versus the Titans versus the Jaguars, and wait, no, Colts versus the Jaguars, excuse me,
Right.
and the Chiefs versus the Texans. And they're at uh not max capacity, obviously due to COVID, but most of the other games were empty. And
Yeah.
I heard a lot of pumped in crowd noise. Once again, I don't like it. I mean, it just feels like, man, why do they got to do crowd noise if there's nobody there? Just let them play. But other than that, it seemed relatively normal watching the games. Reporters, broadcasters are spaced 6 feet apart. Reporters are on the in the stands rather than the field,
Right.
obviously for COVID protection. Any non-player, coaches, staff, anybody has to wear a mask except for Andy Reid, who wore a face shield and it got fogged up half the night.
Yeah. That was. I don't know how he was seeing the field after a while.
There were memes going around on Twitter. Andy Reid drawing up plays on the fog in his face shield. I was like, that's accurate. That's accurate. But other than that, it seemed relatively normal. I'm not gonna get political here, but I was very surprised when the Chiefs and the Texans did their unity thing at center field. Yeah, I'm not going into politics here, but Patrick Mahomes dapped up Deshaun Watson, and I'm like, aren't we supposed to be social distancing here during COVID? That was the first thing I said to my father when he was sitting down watching the game. I was like, "What's he doing? Aren't they supposed to be standing 6 feet apart?" But granted, they're tackling in a game together for about 3-4 hours. So, just sort of my first thoughts on the type of situation we're in with COVID and everything, but everything else seemed pretty much normal.
Well, I agree to a certain extent. I think the thing with fans is, it was kind of hard in the past to appreciate in every game just how important fans were, not only to, momentum's sake, but just in general. I noticed, like, watching a lot of the games, especially the one on Sunday, or the games on Sunday, is just how some of the crowd noise is, first of all, poorly timed when it's pumped in. There's clapping when there's a negative play for the home team, or booing at the wrong time. It's really bizarre. I agree with you that it is kind of weird. I don't think I hate it, though. I think the thought behind it makes sense to me. I mean, you want to have that sort of environment where it seems like there's fans there, and they're trying to make it seem as normal as possible with, being that there's not any fans. Because I think if you have an empty stadium with no fans at all, it's you're just going to be able to hear a pin drop the whole game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think also it injects a certain amount of, like, energy into the players as well. Even I don't really know if the fake crowd noise does it for them, but I really think that it makes a difference. That was my big takeaway from all of it. I think, like you said, the rest of the stuff seemed pretty normal, other than the social distancing and the masks, which we all expected by now. We've been in this thing now for 6 months. So other than that, it was fine. I thought it was interesting because some of the teams, and I don't know if you had heard about this, Josh, but a lot of the crowd noise was at different levels. Some teams would have it higher, some teams would have it lower. I think it was on the Sunday night game, they said it was like 75 decibels, and I can't remember which coach was the one who said that it sounded like a cocktail party or something. It wasn't even that loud at all. So I thought that was an interesting way to look at it, certainly. But
I heard there was a league mandate stating you cannot pump in crowd noise over a certain amount of decibels. So
right, you can't make it crazy. Yeah.
So I think they did that solely for the TV and the viewers, because
right. I agree.
Hearing an empty game, like a game with no fans, it's gonna be interesting because, like, the MLB, you can hear some players talking back and forth to each other. So I think that's why they mandated that.
Well, yeah, and then of course with the talking, I mean, you're going to have some bad language thrown in there too, and I think that again goes back to the TV networks trying to make sure that things stay as clean as possible. Because you're not always going to be able to catch every profanity that's thrown during a game, and of course, even when their stadiums are at full capacity, sometimes that sort of stuff slips through the cracks. So I think it's just another way for them to sort of kind of cover it up with fake crowd noise. It definitely is strange, but I get the idea behind it, and to me, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, other than that, it seemed normal, and I'm just glad football's back. So let's dive right into it. The Chiefs raised their Super Bowl banner, and got a victory at home, 34-20 over the Houston Texans. this was one of the games where I sort of thought the first quarter was very rusty. And I'm going to say this most of the podcast. It's because there was no preseason, in my opinion. But afterwards, the Chiefs picked things up and then just went on a roll. Houston scored the first points of the game. Then Kansas City goes 17 in the second quarter and 7-0 in the third quarter. They ended up outscoring the Texans. The Texans tried coming back, but didn't. But yeah, it was a great game. Kansas City obviously did what they had to do to take it at home to defend their title. And I think a big part in that Chiefs victory was the rookie running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire with 25 carries and 138 yards on the day. Yeah. I'm telling you, that's a guy you have to look out for. I have him written down in the notes here, one of the rookies that will be making a lasting impact in the National Football League. It's only week 1, but if he can stay healthy, he will get a ton of carries for the Chiefs.
And this is the scary thing about the Chiefs. To me, I think they're by far the best team. Not by far, but they're definitely the best team in football. And they showed it. I mean, they outscored the Texans, as you mentioned, 34-13 after the first quarter. And the scary part about their offense is we know how good Patrick Mahomes is. We know he can throw for 200 yards and toss a few scores per game, and that's what he did. And he only had 8 incompletions, had 211 yards and 3 touchdowns. But now they have Edwards-Helaire, who, man, 138 yards. I mean, how do you stop their offense, Josh? I don't know if you can. They pretty much brought everybody back from last season. Of course, Sammy Watkins, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill, the big 3 receivers, who all respectively had a good game and each had a touchdown reception. But now you throw, Edwards-Helaire into the mix, and I really don't know if this team can be beaten. And I know it's early to say that. I know it sounds a little insane, but they're scary good, Josh. And, they can put up points in a hurry. 17 points in one quarter is just incredible. But they're one of those teams who can do it, and especially now, like you mentioned, and having a running back who could be a star, it's just insane. Like it's one more weapon for them that just makes them that much better. And of course they're already the defending Super Bowl champions, and it's scary. I think I'm not going to say undefeated season. I think that's a little far fetched, but I really think they could potentially only lose like 2 or 3 games all season. That's all I'm going to say. And I was very impressed with just how not rusty Patrick Mahomes looked. I mean, he picked up right where he left off at the end of last season. And if you remember, I mean, he didn't play the greatest in the Super Bowl, but just the season he had last year and the start he had this year, obviously he's an MVP candidate, and he came out and really almost played perfect, I think, throwing the football.
And not to mention, this Texans team had a 28-0 lead on them in the playoffs when the Chiefs came back and beat them to go to the AFC Championship game. So,
yeah, they scored 450 some unanswered points or something crazy like that. It was an insane amount.
I mean, not the narrative here. It's week 1, but still, the Chiefs are looking to have another great season with all the weapons they have in the receiver section and rushing. The rookie Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's insane. I watched that whole game and I saw Clyde and I was like, wow, that's a rookie.
Yeah, he's great.
I couldn't believe it. And
he's fantastic.
It didn't help that in the trade, who was it? Jadeveon Clowney going to the Titans, and they get David Johnson out of the mix. No, excuse me. David Johnson was in the mix for Sammy Watkins from Arizona.
Yeah.
I'm getting my names confused. No, jeez, what was his name? Shoot.
Who, the receiver? The receiver the Texans traded? Is that what you're
Yeah,
talking about?
Hopkins,
DeAndre
DeAndre
Hopkins.
Hopkins. I got the two confused.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long show, but anyways, Houston lost one of their best receivers.
Yeah.
Return on investment, David Johnson scores the first touchdown of the season, essentially, but only 77 yards. And like I said, Clowney went to Tennessee. They lost one of their best defensive guys for the Texans. So a lot of stuff Houston needs to piece back together, but still they tried making a comeback at the end. And the score was 34-20 at the end, but still, you said it perfectly. The Chiefs, they're not going anywhere.
No, and I think also the Texans defense. I mean, we knew coming into the season that they're not the same defense they were 4 or 5 seasons ago when JJ Watt was really in his prime. You know what I mean? They're not the same defense. They're going to give up some big plays, and when you play the Chiefs, I mean the number one thing you want to do is first of all is get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, and he had all day to throw. I mean, it just seemed like he had all day in the pocket, and he was able to make any decision he wanted to make. And you're not going to beat anybody with getting no pressure. And I felt like the Texans did a poor job doing that. And that he just picked them apart. It kind of looked like a video game, to be honest. I mean, he really had it. Really just had the game his way. And like you said, this Chiefs team isn't going anywhere. I mean, I think they're the future of the NFL. I'm not going to say they're this generation's New England Patriots. I think that's a little early to be saying that. Now, if they get to another Super Bowl this year or get close, I think you could make that argument that they could see dominance. Probably not 20 years worth, but Patrick Mahomes has a huge contract. He's not going anywhere anytime soon.
10 years.
This Chiefs team, man, is just scary good. And I think they're only going to get better, if that's possible. It's amazing. We'll see what they can rack up this season, but I think it's going to be a 14-win season, something like that.
Pat Mahomes, 10 years locked up in that major contract in Kansas City. So Kansas City 1-0 in their Super Bowl title defense in the 2020 NFL season. Let's move right along. Let's get some action. We have two sort of segments inside of segments here. New head coaches around the league in same faces in different places. Let's talk about the Vegas Raiders. Yes, the Vegas Raiders, not the Oakland Raiders, against the Carolina Panthers. It's good. First off, I'm glad to see Teddy Bridgewater starting for a franchise.
Me too.
I really love what Teddy Bridgewater has, and I'm just happy for him. And under the direction, the Carolina Panthers, of new head coach Matt Rule from Baylor, this game went back and forth most of the day.
Good game. Yeah, it was a good game.
Very good game, and ended up the Vegas Raiders taking the win. Teddy Bridgewater here, 22 for 34 with a touchdown, 270 yards. It looked like just a back and forth game, and the Vegas Raiders just came out on top in the end.
Yeah, I was impressed by both of these teams. They both played clean. They both played good football. And really, I kind of thought the Panthers would win by a couple scores in this game when it first started. But you got to give credit to Derek Carr. He played pretty well. I mean, he only had the one touchdown, but he's gotten a lot of criticism, I think rightfully so, in the last few years about his play and his really his downhill fall from when he was a rookie in 2000. I think this was 2014 when he came to the NFL, and he had a really good rookie season. Josh Jacobs, I mean, he ran the ball really well. He got the ball 25 times. You want to talk about two teams who run the football? You got him with 25 carries, and then Christian McCaffrey for the Panthers with 23.
Almost identical numbers in that game.
Yeah, they both had. Jacobs had three touchdowns, and McCaffrey had 2. So these are two teams, and I think it's a preview of the season for both teams. Are really going to be run first, which is so rare in the NFL now, anyway. But both these teams have weapons. Of course, Henry Ruggs. He's fantastic. I think he's going to be a stud in this league. He only had 3 catches, but he had 55 yards. And he had a long reception of 45-yarder. So I'm excited to watch him in the future. But this is one of those classic shootout back and forth type of games, and the Raiders got the last laugh. And it was a good football game, I think, from start to finish. And the Raiders did what they had to do. That's not easy, for a West Coast team to come all the way east. You know what I mean? The time zone change and the jet lag and all that. It's something that isn't reported enough about, I don't think. But you got to give the Raiders credit, man. They handled their business well and beat a very good Panthers team.
I think the Raiders are rebuilding, coming to a new home in Las Vegas. I think they really have a shot to make it at least over 500, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think John Gruden has a good handle on the team this year. Last year was sort of
it was a mess.
Not the best, but yeah, I think the Vegas Raiders could be making a statement in some way, shape, or form this year. Moving on, let's talk about a new, same faces in different places. Phillip Rivers in the Indianapolis Colts fall to the Jacksonville Jaguars 27-20. Jeez, Gardner Minshew played incredible. Only 1 incompletion in 3 touchdowns. I could not believe that stat line. I was watching back and forth. Once again, another shootout of a game. And the narrative for week 1, in my opinion, is the fact that you don't know what's going to happen. It's a brand new season, and you can see a lot of close games like we did in this one. And jeez, Jacksonville to start this season off with a W. My goodness. Minshew Mania only had 1 incompletion. That says a lot. Looking at Phillip Rivers, 36 for 46, 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Jacksonville's defense looked really good. The Jaguars have been a team who have been struggling for years, but after this performance, watch out for Gardner Minshew and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well,
and we know how good this defense can be. I mean, people forget just 3 or 4 years ago they were in the AFC Championship game or in the AFC Divisional game. I can't remember which one.
Championship against the Patriots.
Championship, right. People forget about that because they played the Pats. So, but yeah, Phillip Rivers, man, those 2 interceptions are just brutal, and the one threw it into triple coverage. He's been in the league for 16 years. This is his 17th season, I believe. It's kind of frustrating to watch a quarterback who's been in the league that long struggle like Phillip Rivers did with the 2 interceptions. But yeah, you mentioned Gardner Minshew, man. You can't ask for a better stat line than he had. Just the 1 incompletion. I mean, that's like playing Madden on rookie. Honestly, his numbers, it's just insane. And he pretty much, I think, put himself out as the leader of this team. I really do think that. I think it's his team now, and he's we sort of saw some of that last year, but Minshew Mania 2.0, it might be better than the original. That's the opening line in this article. So I agree with that. I think it's going to be. I think it's. I think the Jaguars are sneaky, Josh. I really do. And
Not to,
it
are
starts with
you
Gardner Minshew. So
are you talking about the offense there? How they're going to be sneaky?
yeah, I
Yeah,
think so.
I hate to say it, but Jay Gruden is the leader of that Jacksonville Jaguars offense this year.
Why do you hate to say it? He's your former head coach.
Man, I wish he was gone 3 years sooner or something like that. But
Yeah.
Jay Gruden, who knows? Maybe he could make a comeback.
Well, they already had some pretty good pieces there, but of course, Chark and a couple other receivers. I think Chark's the guy that stands out to me, but he didn't have his best game. He only had 3 catches. But what I was impressed with is the way he Gardner Minshew spread the ball out, Josh. I think that's so important for a young quarterback to have
Yeah.
a lot of different receivers because sometimes, they'll lock on and, it'll be a disaster. You'll see an interception or you'll see bad throws, things like that. And that just didn't happen on Sunday for Gardner Minshew. He played really well. And on the flip side of that, Phillip Rivers had a pretty disappointing debut. I think the expectations were a lot higher than he played. But I hate to say his career is over, but I mean it's not looking good for him right now. I don't know truly how much he has left in the tank as far as his superstar status is concerned. I think those days are behind him. Obviously, we can all understand that, but we'll see. I think it's tough for him too, Josh. I know I'm talking a lot about this game. I keep rambling and mumbling, but this is just my final point. We mentioned it at the beginning of the show. No preseason, not really a chance to gel very much. And with a brand new quarterback in a new team, in a new system, you have to have that sort of connection early on to make it work. And maybe that's just what needs to happen. Phillip Rivers needs 2 or 3 games to get used to his new team, the new system he's got to play in, and maybe he can start to put it together. But if we're week 4, week 5, and he's still struggling, I'm not so confident that this is going to be something that works out in the long run.
Yeah, I'm going to make one bold prediction here. I think this will be one and done for Phillip Rivers as an Indianapolis Colt. I hate to say it, he will be a Hall of Famer, but I think after this season he hangs it up.
I agree.
I was very surprised to see him go to the Colts in the first place, but that's one of my bold predictions I'll make for this season is that Phillip Rivers will be one and done and will retire at the end of this season.
I agree with that. Just the drop off in play, I think, and of course his age. Those are just the 2 main reasons why someone would retire anyway. And I think you make a good point. It was kind of surprising he went there to begin with, and I just don't know how this is gonna change things. We'll see though.
All right, moving right along from a 27-20 Jacksonville Jaguars win, let's talk about the New England Patriots. Cam Newton, in a totally different offense, runs for 2 touchdowns in New England. I saw a stat, I forget where, but the last time a New England quarterback had over 50 yards on the ground was 1997. I'm telling you what, Cam Newton looked very good, and the Patriots looked very well. It was a different style offense. I saw there were a lot of designed run plays for Cam Newton, and I mean, it wasn't a railroading win, but they beat the Dolphins. Ryan Fitzpatrick, a terrible showing with 3 interceptions. Credit to the New England defense for playing so well, but Cam Newton, he hasn't played in a while, and I think I think he's looking pretty good so far after week 1.
I agree with that. I had to laugh when you said Ryan Fitzpatrick 3 interceptions. because it just seems to me this has been this guy's whole career. He started seasons, he's played like crap, he's gotten benched about 5, 6 games in. Then he comes in around game 12 or 13, tears it up, and it's wash, rinse, whatever the saying is.
Wash, rinse, repeat.
Wash, rinse, repeat. Thank you. For this guy, and it's still puzzling to me because not in my lifetime have we seen a quarterback quite like Ryan Fitzpatrick, where we keep hearing this is the season he's finally going to put it all together. It's his team now, and he just doesn't step up. It's just the strangest thing. I wasn't really surprised that Bill Belichick. Well, maybe I was, because Bill Belichick's one of those guys who has it a certain way. Much different offense, obviously, when just a season ago, and they seem to have changed their whole system around. But this is what Bill Belichick is so good at. He's playing chess and everyone else is playing checkers.
Uh-huh.
And he game planned to Cam Newton's strength, which is, not really a run first, but 75 yards on the ground, 15 rushes. That's insane. He had 5 more than Sony Michel, their starting running back. So, I think I don't know if this can last as far as putting up just 21 points. I think they're going to have to put more points on the board. But again, this is similar to Phillip Rivers, where Cam Newton's got to take some time to gel for his new team. And I think that's part of the reason why he didn't have any touchdown passes. He was 15 of 19, no turnovers, really solid play. I don't think anyone can argue that. But again, the Patriots are going to be consistent. I do think they're a playoff team. I don't know if they're a 12-4 team. I think they're more like a 10-6 team probably. Because they're just not the same as they used to be. But I was surprised that Bill Belichick, usually so sturdy on his game plan. You know what I mean? And old fashioned and sort of a not really a running quarterback type of way, but he really changed that for Cam Newton, and I think that could be really dangerous. And of course, Cam Newton hasn't played in he didn't play at all last year. I think he got hurt in week 1 or 2, and he missed the rest of the season,
which is incredible.
Yeah, the fact that he's even able to play, to me, is incredible. And to add 2 rushing touchdowns is really good. And of course, he has Julian Edelman, which is really going to help, I think, in the long run to help build some confidence throwing the football. So I think this game is, I think it's about what everyone expected as far as at least the Dolphins. Maybe not for the Dolphins. I think it was what we expected for the Patriots as far as the point totals and all that. But you're right. Back to your original point. The way they were able to change their offense to suit Cam Newton's style, I think is kind of scary for other teams that have to play the Patriots.
Yeah, looking at this, I really feel like they could have put more points on the board, but yet again, it's just week 1. They have a brand new quarterback, and it's just great to see Cam Newton, after a year of not playing, being able to come back after a year off, essentially, and put up pretty decent numbers. And granted, like I said earlier, he didn't have a touchdown or an interception, but he's more of a running quarterback. And I think Bill Belichick designed the playbook to do more run-heavy stuff with Cam Newton. Granted, I think he'll throw a couple touchdown passes in weeks to come, but I feel like it was more getting used to this offense, and Cam Newton got the job done. And I'll make bold prediction number 2 here. Give Ryan Fitzpatrick 5 games. 5 games, and then the Dolphins will switch to Tua. I guarantee it.
I mean, that's been their formula the last 2 seasons. They've had quarterbacks left and right coming in, rotating in and out, finding out guys don't work, guys work. I mean, really, they played it week by week last year, so I don't think that's that bold of a prediction. I think that's I think that's very possible. I think they're going to pump in crowd noise into the Dolphin Stadium that yells, put Tua in, put Tua in. So I think that'd be funny if they could pull that off. But yeah, I agree with you.
No, but I'm saying this as a bold prediction that Tua will come in and get the job done for Miami. He will get the job done. That's my.
Well, we don't know. We haven't seen him play in a. See, it's a similar thing with Cam Newton. We didn't know what we were going to get because Tua got hurt in really badly, and was essentially just recovering before the NFL draft. You know what I mean? So who knows? Who knows what he's going to look like in an NFL uniform? We'll see.
Yeah, that's a good point there. So, but I do think he will come in halfway through the season, bold or not. That's just what I think. 21-11 in that game, the Patriots over the Dolphins. Next on my list, a very sentimental, special game to me. Starting off, we'll just go ahead and dive right into it. The Washington football team and the Philadelphia Eagles. Ron Rivera makes his debut as head coach for the Washington football team. A lot of questions that needed to be answered in the first half, and Washington got the job done and shut out the Philadelphia Eagles in the second half. What a comeback this was. Washington wins 27-17. And just to cap it all off, Ron Rivera with his cancer diagnosis, going into the half 17-7, and Dwayne Haskins only his second year as a starter. His first full season as a starter, his second year with Washington, in the first year as a team captain, steps up, makes a halftime speech. I don't know what was said. I don't know what was delivered in that locker room, but apparently something clicked, and Washington decided to open up with their new team name and beat the division rival Philadelphia Eagles. Washington has not won a home opener in I don't know how long. The last time Washington came back and won from 17 down was 2015. You like that game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Kirk Cousins. So a lot of firsts, a lot to like from this Washington team. And the Philadelphia Eagles, the train sort of went off the track in the second half. Injuries amok. Carson Wentz just didn't look good. And another rookie I want to talk about here is Chase Young.
Young, yeah.
I didn't like his first half performance. He jumped off sides twice. I'm like, come on. But, they're brand new. They didn't get a preseason. And, yeah, I mean, the hard count was just going Carson's way the entire day, pretty much. But after that, in the second half, Washington with a career-high 8 sacks. I've never seen that defense play as well as I saw last Sunday. Incredible. Chase Young played amazing, along with the rest of the Washington defense. Chase Young here with 1.5 sacks, Matt Ioannidis with 1.5 sacks, Jonathan Allen with 0.5 sacks, Daron Payne with 0.5 sacks, Bostic with a full sack. It was incredible. I've never seen that defense play the way it was. Credit to Jack Del Rio, first year in Washington, gets the defense looking 10 times better than Greg Minuski was ever going to let that team get. Incredible. And this comeback, incredible. Ron Rivera gets a planned IV, and Dwayne Haskins as a captain, steps up to his role, delivers a heartwarming, heartfelt speech, and the Washington football team shows the Eagles what they are made of in the second half, and ending up, they go 1-0, and the Eagles are upset at Washington's place with no fans, and the Eagles are going home back to the link with a ton of injuries and a beat up Carson Wentz, who was sacked 8 times for 62 yards. Incredible.
You said it all. I mean, I have nothing to add to that. That was the most impassioned speech Mr. Josh Kirby has ever had on JK Sports. I mean, that was, golly. I think you inspired me, man. Holy cow.
Well,
I mean, I'll say this. You got to credit the Redskins. The Redskins defense more than any other.
Oh, come on! You said Redskins.
Ah, damn it. Football team. I'm going to call them football team. That's what I'm going to call them because that's their mascot right now, the football team. Yeah, the defense was unbelievable. You're exactly right. I mean, when's the last time they've had a performance like this? I can't even think of the last time. Of course, you've watched a lot more Washington football than I have. But yeah, you said it right, and I was impressed with Chase Young. Of course, had the forced fumble, which was the I think either the last turnover or second to last turnover. Of course, the Eagles had 3, 2 really bad interceptions by Carson Wentz, which were great defensive plays by the football team. Jimmy Moreland, of course, kind of local JMU guy, had one of those, and the entire defense played really well for Washington, and I was very impressed with how they did. It was an inspired win, and it was one that needed to happen for sure. And you're exactly right, Jack Del Rio. I think I mentioned this when he was hired. I kind of told you, and I told Corey and several other people that he was the right choice. That he had a lot of experience being a good defensive coordinator, and he was going to help this defense. I didn't think we'd see this quickly. The 3 turnovers, 8 sacks. That Washington defensive line, that Washington pass rush is scary, and I think they're going to be one of the underrated teams in this league this season. I think for obvious reasons, but they could definitely. I think they could win 9 or 10 games if they can keep this play up. Now, I don't think Dwayne Haskins' play. He wasn't. He didn't turn the ball over. He did not turn the ball over, which was key for him. We wanted to see how he would do in that situation. But another key thing was Washington forced got off the field twice on 4th down, Josh, and I think that was huge. But overall, the defense was extremely impressive. The offense, not as much, but they didn't have to be because they had short fields thanks to how well the football team's defense played.
Well, I'll be the first to say this. I was very worried going into halftime, 17-7. Dwayne
right,
Haskins.
You've seen it before.
Yeah. And Dwayne Haskins wasn't completing a pass. Went 3 and out the very first drive. I was like, oh, here we go. But
same old, yeah.
Something clicked. Dwayne did a lot better in the second half. That's why the numbers are 17 for 31 and only 1 touchdown. Once again, I'll say this once again. I still don't like that Washington released Adrian Peterson. We have 2 brand new running backs and a former Detroit Lion and J.D. McKissick. I do like Peyton Barber, though. I really liked his play. He ran in for that touchdown at the end of the game in the goal line. Peyton Barber is more of a goal line, heavy set running back. I like what he had. Gibson Give him some more practice, and I think he'll do well. Do well again. There's still a lot to work on for this Washington football team. Kendall Fuller, he was out with a knee injury. Once they get him back, that would be nice. But they have to work on their secondary. They have to work on their secondary in order to get better. And it's not going to be a cakewalk next week against Arizona, because you saw Arizona beating the San Francisco 49ers, who were in the Super Bowl last year, which was a crazy game. But anyways, Philadelphia, they need to address Carson Wentz, because he did not look like the normal Carson Wentz. Their front line let too many Washington defenders go past, and that was very rare. I couldn't believe that, because Carson Wentz is usually more mobile, and the line for Philly is a lot better, and they need to address the injuries in order for them to get better. The injuries I saw from the Eagles reminded me of the Washington football team in years past, where we would just drop down with injury after injury after injury. But
they've had a lot already.
The Eagles have a lot they need to address before next week.
Well, they got to address that offensive line is the first issue. I mean, you give up 8 sacks. That's, you're not going to beat anybody. I don't care if you're playing a high school team. You're not going to be successful at all. But I just want to touch on the running back situation for Washington. I mean, this season's really going to be a figure it out kind of thing for them as well, because you're going to have a running back by committee sort of thing. Like you mentioned, 3 running backs got touches in this game, and Dwayne Haskins as well. So, it's really going to be a lot of figuring out, figuring out who's going to be that, that all down back. Gibson played okay. I mean, he didn't do anything too special. I think you make a good point about Barber. I think he can be a guy who can get you those couple yards to get you in the end zone once you get down there, and you can count on that. But you got to get down there first. And, you have a young quarterback in Dwayne Haskins who, you can't expect him to always make the right decisions throwing the ball. So they're going to have to figure out the running backs. I definitely agree with that. But if the defense can, if they can keep getting a pass rush like that, you can't expect 8 sacks every game. And I think you would agree with that too. But if they can be consistent in getting pressure on every team they face, I think they can be dominant, to say the least. And I think that should please you very much.
Yeah, it was a great game all around, but still there's a lot that Washington needs to work on to get even better. There is a lot of room for improvement, but still, great win, great first victory for Ron Rivera as head coach of the Washington football team. I just really enjoyed watching that game.
Yeah, I didn't get to see too much of it, to be honest with you, but I did. I was shocked, to say the least. When I saw 17-0, I had the same sort of thought you did. I thought, oh no, poor Josh, he's going to be very sad. But got to give credit where credit's due, man. Washington stepped up in the second half. Their defense played like I've never seen them play before, and you should be happy with their performance for sure.
Absolutely. Washington 27, the Philadelphia Eagles 17 in the NFC East. Moving right along, this was a game that most everybody was talking about for the sole purpose of Tom Brady and a brand new football team.
Who's Tom Brady?
Man. Oh, man. I watched this game. I was like, yeah, hey, Tom Brady looking pretty good marching down the field and rushes it in for his very first touchdown as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. But the Saints defense and the Saints, they pressured him. They got to him. 3 sacks for 15 yards. He was under pressure and gave up 2 interceptions. One was a pick six to the house. That was Janoris Jenkins, I believe. Yes, Janoris Jenkins. But, the Saints look like the classic Saints with Drew Brees. And Tom Brady did not show his true colors in this game. And I'm not sure why. I don't want to attribute this solely to the fact that there was no preseason, but there's a brand new
Part of it.
system for
Yeah.
Tampa Bay with Tom
Well,
Brady, and I just thought that I think there's a lot of room for improvement here. I'm not saying Brady's going to suck the entire year, but this was not a good start to his 2020 campaign as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer.
well, yeah, and you saw on the one interception that wasn't the pick six, the other one, the one to Mike Evans was a miscommunication. Brady was throwing up the field expecting Mike Evans to continue on like a streak, and he stopped his route. So, that's one of those things that I don't know if you can blame solely on having no preseason, but again, this goes back to Phillip Rivers and other quarterbacks who are making who are starting with new teams. There's a certain period where you have to gel. You know what I mean? So Brady doesn't suck. I mean, you don't win 6 Super Bowls and suck. So let's get that out of the way now. But he certainly wasn't his normal self. I agree with that. I think again he's trying to figure out this offense and the system. I feel like I'm making excuses for TB12, but I'm not. Because the Saints kind of picked up right where they left off. We know how good the Saints are, and you can't give them extra possessions, Josh. I mean, you can't turn the ball over anyway. But with the amount of talent the Saints have, especially with Drew Brees, you just can't do it, man. It's just inexcusable, and you give them extra drives, and they're going to take advantage of it. So, it may take a while for Brady to gel with the new team, but they have so much talent on offense. There's no way that they're not going to put it together at some point. I think that's my prediction. They're going to put it together at some point. And they're going to have success. It's just a matter of this season of when. Also, Leonard Fournette.
Oh man, I was going to get on to him next.
He five rushes for 5 yards. I mean, that's pathetic. A guy who you brought in was hyped up as this big signing, and he just has a dud of a game. I think he'll improve this year. I don't think that's going to continue. But maybe he's battling injuries or something. I don't know. He didn't look the same as he did in the past. But to be honest, I don't know why that signing was so hyped up. I think it was because it was the Buccaneers who had already made a bunch of moves, of course, to get Brady and Rob Gronkowski already. So maybe that's why. But he was pretty pathetic. He was pretty pathetic. So I think Brady's gonna turn him around. I don't know how much he'll turn them around, Josh. I want to get your opinion on how you think Brady's going to do the rest of the season.
Well, yeah, Brady is a veteran in this league, and I think he'll work with Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians will work with him to give him a system that he is comfortable with. Not to cherry pick, but I saw former friend of mine, Cliff Rigney, big Dolphins fan. I was like, I asked him, how'd you like Tom? How'd you like Brady? Because I thought he didn't play that well. And he was like, it's because he is a system quarterback. And I'm not trying to cherry pick, but he made an amazing point that Tom Brady was in a unique system with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. And it's one up there in New England that can never be replicated by anybody else because that's how good Bill Belichick and the Patriots are. But I do think... What was that?
I get that, and I heard a lot of people say that, and while I see where that point of view is coming from, I mean, I don't know if you could put another quarterback in that system and you'd have the same success. I think it takes a certain quarterback, a certain person to have that sort of ability. And a lot of people forget that, the Patriots were able to turn dud receivers into studs there. And maybe that's more Belichick than Brady, but Brady's the one throwing them the passes, I think if you think about a system quarterback, you're thinking about somebody who has maybe won one Super Bowl or or less, or has just had a couple good playoff games. You don't think about someone who's won 6 Super Bowls. I think that's kind of silly, but I've heard a lot of people say that, and again, I see that point, but it's to me it's just silly. It's just a silly thing to say. That's all. I mean, Tom Brady's probably near the end of his career. Let's be honest. He's old now. He's really old. So he's not going to be the same quarterback he was even just a few years ago. If you think about how good he was, he's definitely lost some of that. So let's pump the brakes on calling him a good system quarterback. I think that's a little goofy, but that's just my opinion.
Well, to finish off my point here, I feel like if Bruce Arians can develop a comfortable system that Tom Brady will feel comfortable working in to bring him the most success out of playing in Tampa Bay, I think that's going to be the only way, because Tom Brady
takes time.
was frustrated.
Right. And that again, back to my point, that takes time. You can't just expect it to happen.
Absolutely.
When you have a new team, a new system, all that. So
yeah.
let's give it 2 or 3 more weeks and see where Brady is. If it's still not going well, then maybe we can start to say this is not going to end well. Maybe this should be the end for Tom Brady, just depending on how things go. But I think you can make the argument that it's he didn't play well. Obviously, I mean that was a given. But I don't know. I think he'll be able to put it together. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, to me they just have too much talent, Josh, for Brady not to perform well. I mean, he doesn't seem like he has to go the extra mile. I mean, he's got Chris Godwin and Gronk, of course. They have talent. And Leonard Fournette, if he ever wakes up and decides he wants to be a good running back, he's supposed to be good. I think he forgot about that. But
I think Gronk underperformed too. He only had 11 yards.
Yeah, and again, he hasn't played. He didn't play last year. He also missed the season. So
yeah, he was too busy winning WWE titles.
So stupid. So stupid. Oh my God! Don't even get me started. Anyway, okay. Yeah, I just think they have too much talent to just be so bad. And they weren't awful by any stretch as a team. They just didn't. They didn't meet expectations.
So let me finish here by saying I think Tom Brady did not play well, but I think they can improve. But I guarantee you, since this game was on Fox at 4:25 under the title America's Game of the Week with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, there are plenty of people in America saying Tom Brady sucked. This will be his last year in the league.
Yeah, and that's kind of a normal reaction too. With the social media world that we live in, sports and all that, is the second someone has one bad game, oh, they need to retire, oh, they suck, oh, da-da-da-da. It's easy to sit on Twitter and say that. Now, he doesn't suck. Now, the retirement thing, I think, depending on how this year goes, I think we could see him retire. And you could, I don't know. I'm just a big dummy who sits here in Virginia talking about sports. What do I know?
You're not a dummy, Dan, but
appreciate that.
I just one last nugget from this, just a random nugget. I wonder how many 425 America's Game of the Week with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman will be covered for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because before Tampa Bay and Tom Brady, it was all Dallas Cowboys. Now with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how many of those games on Fox will be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 425 this season? Listeners, search that up and tweet me at Kirby on Sports. So my last random nugget, the Saints over the Bucs 34-23. The NFC South NFC South will still run through New Orleans.
For sure.
Next game on the docket, the Dallas Cowboys with a brand new head coach and Mike McCarthy after taking a year off. A lot of people wrote the Rams off, in my opinion, after this 9-7 season. But watching this Sunday night football game, the Rams had an up tempo, amazing tempo. Their speed gameplay was amazing. Sean McVay looked great calling plays. And I mean, Jared Goff didn't have the best game of his life, but I still feel like that the Rams, to start that game off, had amazing tempo. They controlled the speed of the game perfectly, had Dallas on their heels. This was a close game either way. Dallas, there was some good, but it came down to the last play of the game. Dak Prescott fires a bomb. I believe it was to CeeDee Lamb, and the Rams, whoever was defending that, I don't remember his name off.
It was Michael Gallup.
Michael Gallup had the catch, and he got flagged for OPI.
Yeah,
and I was screaming at the top of my lungs because I was like, did that really just happen? But the Rams defender sold that perfectly. It was a close game back and forth, but the narrative for me is, don't write the Rams off this year. The Rams didn't do terrible last season, but don't write the Rams off. Their defense looks great. Aaron Donald was coming through that Dallas front line almost all night. And I mean, for Mike McCarthy taking a year off, I mean, I didn't like what he had, but once again, I think the Cowboys will improve. But great close game, a great win by the Rams, and don't write the Rams off this year.
I agree with you, although I'll say that their division is extremely competitive from top to bottom.
Yes,
there are no bad teams in that division. So
absolutely.
And now, especially with the Cardinals, who I know we're going to touch on, are even, could potentially win that division if they keep playing at that rate. But can we talk about the Rams jerseys for a second? Why? Like, who thought that was a good idea? Their jerseys are awful. They're just awful. Anyway,
I don't really have a problem with them.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, this is a low-scoring game. I think I sort of agree that you shouldn't write the Rams off, but like I said, that division's really good. But yeah, Jared Goff, 275 yards, no touchdowns, had an interception. They really ran the ball a lot, with Malcolm Brown leading the way with 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty much was the leader of the offense. And also, of course, Cam Akers, who I think a lot of people are going to keep an eye on, ran the ball for 39 yards. So I think the Rams, I think they're content to run the football a decent amount. I mean, just between those two guys, they had 32, rushing attempts. And of course, Jared Goff ran 4 times. So, they weren't bad on offense. Robert Woods was impressive, Josh. 6 catches, 105 yards. No touchdowns, but definitely helped lead them down the field on several drives, especially there in the third quarter. So, yeah, I think this game was about what we expected from the Rams. They definitely are trying to say that they're not going to put all the pressure on Jared Goff, because I think in recent years, and I think you would agree, it seemed like he was, they threw the ball a lot more and put a lot more pressure on him to step up and be that sort of star quarterback, which I think at some point you have to be. But they showed in this game they can run the football and be just as content to do that. So on the other side, the Cowboys were just they just seemed kind of sluggish, in my opinion. Zeke Elliott ran the ball pretty well, 96 yards and a touchdown. Didn't have his best game, I don't think. Dak was average. He had a touchdown, 14 incomplete passes, 266 yards. So, I think in a lot of these games, especially in the lower scoring games, what I'm going to say is that there's a lot of rust for a lot of these teams, and I think Dallas is one of those teams that, especially with a new head coach, who definitely is doing things differently than Jason Garrett. It's going to take some time to sort of mesh them together, and I agree that they can improve. I think the NFC East is kind of wide open, to be honest. Maybe except the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to be terrible. But other than that, this was a pretty good game, even for being a low-scoring game. It was a nice debut in the Rams' new stadium for their fake fans to see.
Oh my goodness. $5 billion it cost to build that stadium. That is the net worth of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yep. It is insane, man.
It's a beautiful stadium. I'll give them that.
You put $5 billion, it better be the nicest freaking stadium ever. You better get a massage chair to sit in or something when you go get a ticket to go see a game there.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, it was a pretty good game. I enjoyed it. I think the rust on both sides showed pretty well, and I think you would agree.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I had the Cowboys winning this game because I thought the Rams were going to take a little bit of time to be as good as they are, but the Rams came out and I loved what they had. And it was a closer game than I expected, and the Cowboys ended up losing. And either way, I enjoyed this win.
And Jalen Ramsey should get an Oscar for that performance, that nice little flop there.
Oh,
yeah. For the offensive pass interference. That was quite the nice little acting job. So, but it worked out. I think it was offensive pass interference, but it was close. I mean, I don't know if it was enough to affect really his trajectory, to use a fancy word. But yeah, that's kind of what I expected, a low-scoring game. Both teams kind of trying to figure out what they were going to do, with their offenses, and that's what we saw.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Rams beating the Dallas Cowboys, improving to 1-0, christening the brand new SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. 2 more games left on our docket. I didn't really want to talk about this one, but Dan, you sort of inspired me to talk about this one. What happened to 49ers? They just didn't look good at all. I mean, the Cardinals, Kyler Murray in his second year had a rushing touchdown. Hopkins looked good, but I mean, the 49ers, last year you were in the Super Bowl. Granted you lost, but you all had a great season, and this year you come out and lose by 4 to the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like this was a game San Francisco should have won, and I'm not really sure why they lost.
DeAndre Hopkins, I think he makes the biggest difference for this offense. He didn't have a touchdown, but he had 151 yards, which is just mind-blowing for a receiver. Yeah, I hate to use the word rust again because I feel like I've been talking about the Rust Belt or something during this. But to me, that's what it seemed like for the 49ers. Maybe a little bit of Super Bowl hangover or something. But yeah, I agree with you. It was a little surprising to me that they just came out kind of flat. They really did. I mean, Garoppolo had 2 touchdowns, but he was 19 of 33, which is not ideal. The Cardinals just had a good mix of pass and run, Josh. I think that much is true. And of course, Kyler Murray leading the way. That's very dangerous for teams that have to play that. I think that's sort of a new era in football now. with guys like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and other mobile quarterbacks, where we'll see a lot of quarterbacks leading the way in the rushing category. They're a good football team, and I kind of thought that, I kind of think this division's up in the air right now. I think really all the teams are competitive. And I think the 49ers, like we've said with a lot of these teams we've talked about, will end up putting it together. I hope Raheem Mostert puts it together more, because he's on my fantasy team, and I really need him to step up and have a better game running the football. Just 56 rushing yards is kind of pathetic. So I think they'll put it together. But yeah, I can't explain why they struggled. I think the Cardinals are better than people give them credit for sure. And I think people need to take note that Kyler Murray's a pretty good quarterback, and he can run at the drop of a hat. It really doesn't take much.
That's what I'm worried about going into week 2 when Washington goes to Arizona. So, like I said earlier, that will not be a cakewalk, Washington. That will not be a cakewalk.
No, it's going to be a tough game. If they can continue to get pressure like they did against Philly, then I think they could get the win. But to have to defend Kyler Murray is not an easy task. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But the Cardinals could be sneaky. I think another one of those teams that could kind of surprise some people this year, Josh. And I think they're flying under the radar, and that's probably the way they like it.
All right. That was the Cardinals beating the San Francisco 49ers. Let's give you a couple more quick nuggets before we go into our last game we have slated to cover. Another new head coach, the Cleveland Browns, and Kevin Stefanski coming over from the Minnesota Vikings. Not much to talk about. The Ravens just dominated that whole performance, and the Browns only put up 6 points. So, Dan, congratulations first off. I'm not sure if you want to touch on this team a little bit, but I mean, the Browns just did not look good at all. And
no, they did not.
You watched that game more, but not a good way to start off for the Browns. And Odell Beckham dropping down to the number 2, and I didn't like it. The Browns need a miracle.
Yeah, Baker also looked pretty bad. I mean, they talked about, at the beginning of the game how he'd lost weight and he had done a lot of growing in the off season, things like that. I think maturity level, sure. I mean, he's grown, but he just didn't look comfortable at all. And of course, the Browns scored in the first quarter, and that was it. They were shut out after that. So credit the Ravens defense, who, as much as I hate to, be biased for my own team, I think the Ravens are one of the best teams in the NFL. I think that's a given, and they kind of reloaded in the offseason and are set to, I think, be even better this year. So that could be a sign of things to come. And Lamar played really well. So I don't really have much to add to what you said. I mean, it was a dominating performance. Really from the onset, a couple big plays early on for the Browns. Kareem Hunt had a couple nice runs, but really the Ravens pretty much had their way. And there weren't many games this week that were like that. So I'm definitely happy with that, and I hope it continues all season. And hopefully we see the Ravens actually win a playoff game if they do get there this year. So
next nugget for you, Joe Burrow makes his debut as a rookie with the Cincinnati Bengals. He rushes for a very long touchdown, gets so close to winning, but their kicker cannot get the job done as he pulls his hamstring. The Los Angeles Chargers defeated the Cincinnati Bengals in that game. The late Monday Night Football game, Steven Gostkowski misses 3 field goals in a row, but comes in clutch to win the game for Tennessee, beating the Denver Broncos 16-14. to 14 in that game. Drew Lock with 216 yards and a touchdown in that game. Very close game all around. But last but not least, the final game I'd like to cover. Thank you once again for listening to those short nuggets. 364 days from Monday night ago, 364 games was the last time Big Ben Roethlisberger played a snap of football. Monday night, he came back and threw 3 touchdowns against the New York Giants. Granted, Daniel Jones looked decent, had a few touchdown passes.
Some really bad throws, though.
And some really bad throws that led to interceptions. And the New York Giants, once again, before we get any further, new head coach is the New York Giants with Joe Judge from the New England Patriots and the offensive coordinator, Jason Garrett. Is Jason Garrett potentially the reason why Saquon Barkley only got 6 yards on 15 carries and Ben Roethlisberger had 9 yards? Ben Roethlisberger rushed more than Saquon Barkley. A quarterback rushed more than Saquon Barkley. Yeah, I don't get that. Can you explain that for me, Dan?
Well, you got to think of the defense. You got to think of the defensive front they're going up against there. I don't think you can blame Jason Garrett at all. He gave Saquon the ball 15 times, or drew up plays for him to get the ball 15 times. Really, that's on Saquon Barkley, and that's on the offensive line. So, the Steelers have a really good defensive front. They actually have a really solid defense from front to back, and they're probably a top 5 defense in the NFL. So we knew their defense was going to be good coming in, and that stat line blows my mind. That he only had 6 rushing yards, kind of a waste of a fantasy draft pick, if I say so myself. But again, and to use the R word again, rust plays a factor in all this, I think, too. But that's really pathetic. Also, one of the Daniel Jones picks, where I don't know if you saw it, it was really bad. It was in the end zone.
Yeah.
He just kind of was falling away and kind of just threw it up. That looks like a pass I would make. It was really pathetic. So you mentioned Big Ben. I was really impressed with his play, and he just looks like he didn't miss a beat at all. 3 touchdown passes, 21 of 32. He was just solid, locked in from the onset. Daniel Jones, I thought, started the game well, but really couldn't do anything really in the second half. So it's frustrating if you're a Giants fan, because at halftime it's a 16-10 game. The Giants are in that game, and or not 16-10. Geez, my math is terrible. And they just the Steelers were the better team. I think a lot of people knew that. So what a difference it is to have Big Ben back, and this is a dangerous Steelers team. A lot of people are kind of counting them out this year, saying that they're not the same team they were a couple years ago, and all these other things, because they've had a lot of injuries and they missed the playoffs and they've underperformed. But they can be really dangerous. And how about Benny Snell's performance, Kirby? Not even mentioning him. He had 113 rushing yards. That takes some of the pressure off Big Ben as well. So for Pittsburgh, I mean, they're solid. They're a solid team on both sides of the ball. Their defense is really going to help them out in a lot of games. Big Ben can still play at a really high level. More than his other 2004 draft mate, Phillip Rivers. So, and for the Giants, I mean, they need some work. I think they put a lot of pressure on Daniel Jones. He threw it 41 times. Of course, when you're trailing, you're going to throw it more, but 15 rushes for 6 yards is absolutely pathetic, and you should definitely expect more from a guy like Saquon Barkley, who should be, a top 3-4 rusher in the NFL.
Absolutely. Just credit to Big Ben to come back and throw 3 touchdowns in that game. He looks just as well. Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he will be, no doubt. No ifs, ands, or buts. Hall of Famer for Big Ben Roethlisberger. The Steelers 26 and the Giants 16. And that's about all the games we have on docket. What a great week. I'm just so glad football is back, Dan.
Man, my Sundays are
Booked.
a lot of football watching. So much I think my head spun a little bit on Sunday. There was just so many games going on, but man, it's and also the Red Zone channel. I know of course you have Sunday tickets, so you can just go back and forth to games as you please. Not all of us have that sort of luxury, so consider yourself lucky.
Thank you.
But Red Zone is a great invention as well. I mean, you can see it all happening right in front of you. So big plays, and that was definitely one of my favorite things that I missed during all of this. So glad to have the football back. Glad to have Red Zone back. Glad to have the commentary, the fake fan noise, all of it. I'm here for all of it.
All right, Dan, before we move on to our next segment, let's bring you a new segment I'd like to implement. What are you looking forward to? I'm going to call it for right now. Dan, week 1 is in the books. From what you have seen week 1, what are you looking forward to seeing most about week 2 in the NFL?
I am most looking forward to, I think it's going to be a really good game, and that is, and I hate to be a homer and I hate to be biased again, the Ravens going on the road playing the Texans. I think it's going to be a good game. You got two really, really good quarterbacks. It's the battle of Lamar Jackson versus Deshaun Watson. I think it's going to be a really solid game, and I think a challenge for both teams. So I think I'm most excited to see that game and kind of see the battle between Lamar and Deshaun Watson. I personally think Lamar is going to win, but that's just my opinion. Yeah, I think I'm most excited for that game and to see that back and forth between those two competitors. And really, two guys that are kind of the face of the future of the NFL. So yeah, that's what I'm most looking forward to.
And I am most looking forward to Cam Newton sort of stepping up into a Sunday night battle with the Seattle Seahawks. You know, Russell Wilson, the Seattle Seahawks. You know they'll be good. I want to see how Cam Newton handles himself in a situation where Seattle could give New England a run for their money. And that is a Sunday night football game as well. So I'm honestly looking forward to that the most out of everything during week 2. Cam Newton looked well. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, as we mentioned earlier, and looking to see what Cam Newton can do against Russell Wilson in an explosive offense for the Seattle Seahawks is going to be huge. Russell Wilson last week, 31 for 35 with 4 touchdowns, 1 to Metcalf, 2 to Chris Carson, and 1 to Greg Olsen. So he's Wilson spreading the football around to different receivers, obviously. So it's going to be a battle, I think, and I want to see how Cam Newton and Bill Belichick handle their first test to a team that could give them a run for their money.
Yeah, I really thought about picking that game as well, Josh. I think that's going to be a really fun matchup, and you know, a little bit of a history there between Cam Newton and versus the Seahawks. Of course, playing each other several times throughout the last few years. Of course, one of those times was the NFC Championship game. So several years back. So this is definitely a really fun matchup. I'm excited to see it, and you know, I think the Pats could pull the upset. I really do think that, but they're going to have to play. They're going to have to play really well, and they're going to have to force Russell Wilson to make mistakes, and he usually doesn't make that many, you know, bad interceptions or bad mistakes. So it's definitely one of the most intriguing matchups this coming up week.
Absolutely. The Kirby on Sports podcast is just getting started. Once again, Dan, thanks for the time. Let's do it again soon. That's Dan Demski, constant contributor to the Kirby on Sports podcast. Coming up next, Fantasy Football Files with Jason Kamlowski.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fantasy Football Files. I'm your host of this segment, Jason Kamlowski, fantasypros.com. You can catch my weekly handcuff article on fantasypros.com. Should come out every Monday or Tuesday. Going to talk a little bit about week one. Try to condense this year, keep it down to maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Just talk about some top performers, maybe some people that you can pick up in your leagues. Try to get this out as fast as we can. So just diving in, a lot of big offensive weeks this week. A lot of usual suspects at the top of the passing list. Matt Ryan up there with obviously led the way with 450 yards passing. Russell Wilson had a huge day. Lamar Jackson kind of did his thing. 275 yards passing, and then also chipped in on the ground. But a couple guys that maybe we maybe glossed over in the offseason, Aaron Rodgers, Phillip Rivers, both going for 360 yards plus. Rodgers absolutely dusted the Minnesota secondary, and actually probably left some yards on the field with a couple of passes to Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He had a touchdown that he just couldn't get in the end zone, so probably left some points on the board there. As far as Phillip Rivers goes, kind of in an environment there, a little bit surprising in Jacksonville. They got into a little bit of a shootout. I don't know if we can expect that every week, but Rivers did have 46 attempts on the week, which was second in the league behind Matt Ryan. So really good offensive environment for Phillip Rivers. Josh Allen had a tremendous week as well. So a lot of guys that I think we were probably looking at in the offseason during draft time. Not really a whole lot of surprises. Kyler Murray with a big week, 230 yards passing, chipped in 91 on the ground. Had a huge fantasy week. I think probably the bigger storyline though is a couple guys are probably disappointed at the quarterback position. Obviously Tom Brady's the one everybody talks about. Not a great week for him. Just 239 yards, 2 touchdowns, also threw 2 interceptions. Had the pick 6 in the third quarter. Dak Prescott. Probably the Dallas in general was probably one of the most disappointing teams of the weekend to go with the Eagles. Carson Wentz looked terrible. Kind of weird with Carson Wentz. It looks like the Eagles didn't do anything to kind of address their offensive scheme with having 3 offensive line starters out. Wentz actually had the highest ADOT of any quarterback in week 1. Which is kind of wild because you would think that they would probably go to more of a short, quick passing game, but they were still trying to push the ball downfield, which in the long term probably helps his prospects. But I think he took 8 sacks. I mean, the Washington line, defensive line, just absolutely ate them up. So Wentz did not have a great day at all. Honestly, it was probably one of the worst performances of the week, and very disappointing. Whether you played him in season long or in DFS. A pretty disappointing line for Carson Wentz. Drew Brees didn't do a whole lot either. Only 18 of 30 for 160 yards. Did have 2 touchdowns. But that game flow was kind of weird for the Saints. They did get the pick 6, like I said. And Brees really didn't have to do a whole lot in the air. I think between Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara, I think the running backs had between 25 and 30 touches, so they really went to a kind of a conservative game plan there. Be interesting to see what the Saints do with Michael Thomas being out. Looks like for at least a couple weeks with a high ankle sprain. So again, the quarterback position, kind of is what it is. I'd say your top pickups of the week if you've got to make a move. Gardner Minshew's probably out there. One guy, and I wrote him up as a sell, actually, on Dynasty Football Digest. This is more for Dynasty Leagues. For a sell was Cam Newton. Cam had a pretty efficient day passing, 15 and 19 for 155 yards. I also added 75 yards on the ground, two rushing touchdowns. So Cam had a big day. I watched that game. I didn't really get a good feel for the Patriots offense. I thought they looked a little bit sluggish. That might be something that kind of corrects itself over time, but they did not look very explosive at all. Kind of really slowed the game down, so I don't know if there'll be a lot of great offensive environments for the Patriots this year. It looks like they're going to play a little bit differently than they have in the past. That's kind of what Belichick does, right? I mean, he kind of adapts his personnel and the game plan to what he has. But I think the top pickup of the week would probably definitely be Gardner Minshew. I mean, he was 19 of 20 for 173 yards and 3 touchdowns. Not a ton of yardage, but very efficient. And we always like touchdowns. And if you're in a league that doesn't penalize interceptions, I mean, Minshew's your guy. Last year only threw 5 picks. So, he's going to protect the ball. And, the Jacksonville defense, as well as they played against the Colts, I don't know that the Jacksonville defense will hold up week after week. So Minshew would be a good target. I also think Teddy Bridgewater could be a good bye-week filler somewhere down the road. That Carolina defense is really bad. So there are going to be a lot of shootouts. Talk about some other pieces of Carolina offense here shortly. As far as rushing goes, we start off Thursday with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, he had a tremendous rookie game for the rookie. First game out of the chute, 138 yards, a touchdown. Kind of weird he didn't get any targets, which I think that'll correct itself over time. Basically they just saddled him up, though. I mean, the fact that he got 25 carries right out of the gate is really a good sign for him. Derrick Henry, 31 carries last night, kind of what we come to expect. They're just going to, kind of pound the rock. Tennessee is shorten the game. On my prediction piece on Fantasy Pros, I actually picked Tennessee to go to the Super Bowl from the AFC, doing exactly what they did last night, which was basically just pounding the football and playing good defense. So Henry will be a viable target. I think he also had 4 targets in the passing game last night too, which was good to see. But he basically had a massive snap share for the Titans last night. Ezekiel Elliott had a big game Sunday night. He was probably the lone bright spot really for the Cowboys offense. He had a touchdown rushing and receiving. The receiving touchdown was ridiculous. There were about 4 Rams in the area and nobody could bring him down. Josh Jacobs with a huge game, 3 touchdowns. Christian McCaffrey kind of had like a ho-hum 28-point PPR game, and nobody kind of mentioned it, which just shows how good he really is. But really, there were a couple big winners at the running back position. One this week was Adrian Peterson, who kind of owned the Detroit backfield despite only being on the team for about 8 days. He led the team in rushing with 93 yards and then chipped in 21 yards in the air. So really strong showing from Peterson. I think, given Matt Patricia's track record with running backs, it's probably safe to say that Adrian Peterson is going to get an opportunity. If you recall 2 years ago when they had LeGarrette Blount in Detroit, I think he averaged like 2.7 yards per carry, but yet he was still getting a heavy workload every week. So I would say Peterson probably has a good chance at leading that team in carries. Another winner from the weekend, and this is mostly by probably default, is with an injury, is Melvin Gordon. Philip Lindsay went down last night. Sounds like he's got some kind of a foot or ankle injury. So Gordon will probably get 20, 25 touches now in the Denver backfield. He looked pretty sharp last night. I was actually surprised at how good Melvin Gordon looked. I avoided him in every league, so I'll kind of take the early L on that. Another player that looked good, and I think if you have him, this is one guy that I would be looking to sell immediately, is David Johnson. Looked really good on Thursday night, but also I think he's just one of the most fragile running backs in football. Looked kind of like vintage David Johnson to an extent, but I think it's just a matter of time before he gets hurt. So I think the window to sell him is probably open this week and maybe next, because it looks like Duke Johnson is going to miss this weekend. So David Johnson will have the entire Houston backfield to himself. But if he has a good week 2 for the Texans, I would be looking to get out from underneath him. Going down the line a little bit more, just a couple of guys I think that we need to touch on that maybe disappointed. Austin Eckler got 20 carries, but only 1 reception in the passing game, which was kind of disappointing. I think after last year, we thought he'd have a bigger role in the passing game. Nick Chubb got outscored for I think the 7th time in the last 10 games by Kareem Hunt. And I've kind of said from the beginning, if you read my handcuff piece, Kareem Hunt is the best handcuff in fantasy, and I'm not even sure if he's the handcuff. That looks like it's going more towards the committee. With Cleveland signing Hunt last week, I think it just makes a lot of sense for them to keep getting him involved. And he's really a tremendous football player. I mean, minus the situation he had with the domestic violence thing. I mean, if you take that out, and we should never downplay that or never kind of just shove that to the side. But, from just a pure football perspective, I mean, Kareem Hunt is like super talented. I mean, he's probably like one of the best 5 running backs in the NFL. And if Nick Chubb were to like get hurt, Kareem Hunt would be a top 5 option at the position. So, big fan of Kareem Hunt. Have him on a couple rosters where I was able to get him in like the mid rounds. Because he's flex viable, and then also, if there is an injury to Chubb, I mean, he immediately becomes like a league winner. Raheem Mostert took a screen pass 90 yards for a touchdown. So, otherwise he had a really solid day. 15 carries for 56 yards. Todd Gurley looked okay. I think Gurley's kind of in the David Johnson mold. I think we've probably seen the best of him, but he didn't look too bad. In Atlanta, it's just that Atlanta team is so bad. They're just going to have to throw the ball so much. I mean, their defense just can't stop anybody. So they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. And I think they're going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. So I don't know really what we can expect out of Gurley from just a pure workload perspective, but I think that's probably a good thing. If he gets, between 15 and 20 touches a game, if he gets 15 touches and he gets 3 or 4 receptions, I mean, he's easily a solid RB2. I think a lot of people probably drafted him right in that range or like in the low RB1 range, which we can live with that. But he's probably gonna be a little bit touchdown dependent too to hit value every week. A name that we need to really talk about though is Benny Snell, who came on 19 carries, 113 yards last night. Had a huge blitz pickup in the second half on a touchdown pass to Juju, which was kind of good to see. But Snell kind of fits what the Steelers want to do on offense a little bit better, I think, than James Conner does. He's a little bit more willing to get north-south and get downhill, whereas Conner kind of tries to run things and stretch it out a little bit wide. So I think Snell will be a better fit for that. It looks like the Steelers are doing a lot of pre-snap motion last night, which I kind of understand. I mean, I get what they're trying to do, but I think Snell fits more what their offensive line is trying to do because they have a bunch of maulers up front. And I just think that's what the Steelers need to do to win. I mean, that defense looked like it was Super Bowl caliber last night. And with Snell in the backfield, they can kind of control the game and not put so much on Ben Roethlisberger's shoulders, especially early on. And if you read my handcuff article, I talk about J.K. Dobbins, who had a good week. He out-snapped and out-touched Mark Ingram, although I think for now, I think especially the first week, if you look at, snap shares and target shares and things like that with running backs, it seems like teams are trying to spread things out, which makes sense because there's no preseason. But I have Dobbins as my number 2 handcuff. Alexander Madison had a good game for Minnesota, spelling Dalvin Cook. And it's not that Dalvin Cook didn't have a good game. He got in the end zone, and I think he had 20 PPR points. But, I mean, Madison had 10 carries for 80 yards himself, or 10 touches for 80 yards, and he also had 4 receptions. If Dalvin Cook goes down, Alexander Madison is the league winner. So if you have Cook and Madison is out there, I would highly suggest picking him up. As far as receivers go, I had monster days from Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins, that trade from Houston looks worse now than it did at the time, and it looked pretty horrific at the time. I think Hopkins had 16 targets on Sunday. Adams had 17. Both of them went over 150 yards. Adams had the 2 touchdowns. I mean, Adams had an absolutely incredible day. There were a ton of 100-yard receivers this week. And if you're even looking at like last night, Darius Slayton went off, had 102 yards on 6 catches and 2 touchdowns. Absolutely torched Stevie Nelson on a post play where Minkah Fitzpatrick just bit hard on the play action. Slayton absolutely roasted Stevie Nelson, made a nice catch in the end zone. Russell Gage came kind of out of nowhere and got 12 targets, but that's the last couple of games he's played. That's kind of been his thing. Like I said, I think the Falcons are going to have to run a lot of 3 wide sets, so that's probably going to open up some things for Gage. I wouldn't probably go too nuts on him with the fab bidding though, because I think the 12 targets is probably unsustainable. He'll probably settle in somewhere closer to 5 or 6 a game. But obviously if Julio Jones were to go down or Calvin Ridley were to go down, that would bump his workload a good bit. Jamison Crowder, 7 for 115, had a big 69-yard touchdown. 13 targets, which I think we kind of expected. They got behind early. The Jets are just so bad. That's just a really bad football team. But they got behind early, had to throw a bunch, and Crowder kind of salvaged his day. Same thing with Robbie Anderson. He had a 75-yard touchdown. Everybody, I think, right now is looking at the Carolina offense and saying, oh, Robbie Anderson, Robbie Anderson, Robbie Anderson. If it's me, I'm buying DJ Moore. And I think if Robbie Anderson's good, that's going to be good for DJ Moore. But if you look at the target share in Carolina, DJ Moore out-targeted Robbie Anderson. DJ Moore was still he had 9 targets. Anderson, I believe, had 8. So, DJ Moore was still the preferred target for Teddy Bridgewater. Moore would be the guy I'd be buying in the Carolina offense if you're going to buy anybody. Amari Cooper, 14 targets. It was kind of weird. The Dallas passing game, it was just odd, but that offensive line was just getting blown up all night. Aaron Donald absolutely wrecked them Sunday night, but Cooper had 10 catches for 81 yards. Terrible A-dot. Seemed like Dak was just trying to get rid of the ball quickly. Didn't have much time to throw, but like I said, that Dallas offensive line just got absolutely owned. There was a play, Aaron Donald took out 3 guys on one play. I mean, Dak was just under pressure constantly all night. Looked like he was thrown out of a phone booth. But encouraging to see, Cooper get targeted like that. But, we saw this last year too. He kind of had a breakout game in the first game and then was quiet for a couple after that. So consistency will be the name of the game for Coop. Julio Jones doing his thing for 9 for 157 and 12 on 12 targets. Didn't score, which again we've just come to kind of expect out of them. Calvin Ridley 9 for 130 and 2 touchdowns. So I mean, if you stack the Atlanta offense with Gage, Jones, Ridley, and Matt Ryan, I mean, you would have put up a ton of points in DFS. Just a ridiculous day for those 3. Just massive target share. And obviously with Ryan having to throw the ball so many times, it kind of makes sense. Odell Beckham had 10 targets, only had 3 catches, 22 yards. He looked really disinterested on Sunday. I'm not sure how much I'd be buying into Beckham at this point. Beckham looked disinterested. Le'Veon Bell looked like he wanted to be anywhere but where he was. He's got a pulled hamstring, so he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. But it's tough to watch players like that because Beckham has this massive contract, Bell has this massive contract, and they're just such divas. And they're really, it's just tough to watch whenever you see guys acting like that. And you have people like just, out here struggling and, these guys are making millions of dollars, but yet they look like they're absolutely miserable. I mean, it's just really unfortunate to see like 2 guys that are such uber talented guys have that happen. Will Fuller on Thursday night, 8 for 112 on 10 targets. I mean, he's going to have a massive target share as long as he stays healthy. Fuller is somebody I 100% would be looking to get on my roster. I mean, he might even be out there on the waiver wire in some leagues, and if he is, unload the clip on him because, again, as long as he's healthy, Deshaun Watson's going to target him. Dallas Goedert was, we'll get to tight ends in a minute. But yeah, I mean, from the wide receiver position, I mean, again, big offensive day on Sunday, big offensive weekend. And some familiar names, with the yardage total, Jones, Adams, Hopkins, all at the top, all over 150 yards, which really comes as no surprise. In the tight end position, I mean, Dallas Goedert was a monster on Sunday. He was probably the lone bright spot for the Philly offense. And 8 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. There's some rumbles that Ertz is on his way out, which would kind of make sense that Goddard's going to start getting a lot more looks. If you drafted Goddard this offseason, congratulations. He is also probably available in some leagues. So, again, another guy to be looking at getting on your roster. Noah Fant had a good game last night without Cortland Sutton, which was to be expected. I mean, Fant is kind of probably the number 2 option in that offense after Sutton. So Fant, obviously, with a good night, 5 for 81 and a touchdown. Hunter Henry, 5 for 73, had 8 targets, which was good to see. Tyrod Taylor is going to target his tight ends. But that Chargers offense, man, that's another one. They play slow. And, I'm not sure when Tyrod got bad, but he looked bad on Sunday. And again, that's kind of a bummer because, you're rooting for a guy like Tyrod because, he's proven over the years to be effective and now he's kind of been given the chance. So I hope the leash is not too short there for him. So some guys you need to be looking to pick up this week. I wrote up a couple guys the handcuff article, but Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack went out with a torn Achilles, so now Jonathan Taylor is going to be the number one back in Indianapolis, and he had 6 receptions on Sunday, which I think really bodes well for his overall floor and ceiling. I mean, he has a massive opportunity here. I know Nyheim Hines had a big workload this past weekend, scored 2 touchdowns. I don't know how much I'd be buying into Nyheim Hines, especially in a non-PPR, because I think he's going to be pretty worthless unless he's catching passes out of the backfield. But I think the guys that I would be looking to spend up this week on Fab would definitely be Benny Snell, Jamison Crowder if he's available. I think he'd be another guy because that Jets team is going to play from behind all the freaking time. Will Fuller, if he's out there, he's another guy I'd be looking to spend up on because, again, Houston's going to be in a lot of shootouts. Paris Campbell, if you're in a PPR, 9 targets, 6 for 71. He was kind of popping in some optimizers on Sunday morning for DFS. So I think it's obvious that he could be another target, especially in a PPR. And Corey Davis from Tennessee, 8 targets, 7 catches, 101 yards. That Tennessee offense, again, is a run-first offense, but Davis might be a sneaky waiver wire ad that might fly under the radar because they were the late game Monday, and some people may not realize, exactly what he did during that game. So that's kind of where we're at. We're at about the 20-minute mark here, so we're going to shut this down. But, again, this is Fantasy Football Files. It's Jason Kamlowski of FantasyPros.com on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Wrapping up week 1. Excited for week 2. If you need to, you can check me out on Twitter. That's at Jason Kamlowski on Twitter. You can shoot me a message on there. If you have any start-sit questions, be happy to answer them. Other than that, enjoy week 2. We'll see you next week.
Once again, Fantasy Football Files with Jason Kamlowski. We look forward to hearing Jason and his Fantasy Football Files segment each and every week on the Kirby on Sports podcast. Before we wrap things up, let's give you a look at the matchups for week 2 in the National Football League. Starting off Thursday night, a battle between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. We have the Atlanta Falcons playing the Dallas Cowboys to start off the 1 o'clock slate. Another division rival between the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. The Minnesota Vikings against the Indianapolis Colts. The Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The San Francisco 49ers and the New York Jets. The Los Angeles Rams and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Denver Broncos facing the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears, the 4 o'clock slated games, Baltimore against Houston, Kansas City against the Los Angeles Chargers, the Washington football team against the Arizona Cardinals, and 8:20 on Sunday Night Football, the New England Patriots facing the Seattle Seahawks. I mentioned that on what to look out for in week 2. In Monday Night Football, the New Orleans Saints travel to the brand new home of the Las Vegas Raiders to face none other than the Las Vegas Raiders. That's week 2. We are looking forward to it. I'm sure you all are too. Thank you once again for tuning in to this edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Once again, week 1 was a blast, and we are so looking forward to week 2 in the National Football League. Make sure you check us out on all streaming platforms. We are on Anchor, anchor.fm/Kirby on Sports podcast. Make sure you find the Kirby on Sports podcast on all social media platforms as well. Give us a like, give us a follow, anything you can do. We greatly appreciate the support, as always. We're sponsored by Regroup Building Services and PM Plus Reserves. Big thanks to MPT Now Productions, Productions by Q, and Dave Johnson for all their support as well. Josh Kirby signing off on this edition of the Kirby on Sports podcast. Till next time, create greatness, and we will see you soon.